I showed a lot of stuff earlier, but in this session here, I just want to like actually show it and then also show some additional things. And if you have any particular questions, I can go deeper into things. You're welcome to follow along with me. And so then you can see if you run into things while we're doing it. So yeah. All right, so to start, actually, the thing that you can do is find the, so GitHub Codespaces has all, they actually have a bunch of default templates. So if you go to github.com and you click on your face and you go to your Codespaces, all right? And when you go to your Codespaces, you will see at the top all these quick start templates. And these are great ways to get started. So what I would say is that if you want to try this out right now, easiest way to get started is with the Jupyter Notebook Quick Start. That's probably the most relevant, but we can check out and see all of them. All right, so I do Flask and Django a lot, but let's go ahead. So if you go to this one, you'll see the repo, and then you can click on it. And you'll see the Codespaces tab. Since I already have a Codespace, it's actually listing my Codespace here, so I can already see it, and I can see whether it's currently active. I can see that it has uncommitted changes, so I might want to commit those. And I can click through to go through it. I actually already have it open in a tab too. Each of the Codespaces have these randomly generated names that are actually sometimes really funny, and I love them. This one's not my favorite, but usually it has to do with food. It's like fantastic couscous. Like yesterday, I had both a fantastic couscous and a fantastic fish stick, and I thought it was fantastic. So if you already have a Codespace, it will list it, but you can also make a new one. And let me show that you can also do new with options. We can say, I want to create a brand new one. And so when you do this, and this is something I'm showing you, you don't have to show this to students. So when you're creating links for students, you can give them links that, kind of skip this step and just like get them right into the Codespace. But I do want to let you all see the options. These are all things that can be configured in the URL. So here I can say which branch it's going to be on. I can pick the dev container.json that we're using. In this case, there's only one option, but you can have multiple. Region, I guess, if you're teaching in Southeast Asia, probably better to pick one in Southeast Asia. It's going to be faster. Machine type, this is relevant. Like there are some things that you might be doing something really intense. If you're using, I don't know, TensorFlow or something like that, that you might need, higher core. This is going to use up more of the quota because you're using more compute. But it's if that's what you need, that's what you need. I usually just go with the default. So those are all options that can be configured here. They can be configured in URLs so that students don't have to think about it, right? Because you don't make me think, right? Just do it. So here you can see now I'm at Fluffy Adventure. So this is starting a new Codespace. This one was pretty fast to load because they have what's called a pre-build. So if you do want to make your Codespaces really fast to build, you can configure a pre-build. And that's configured for this space. If you don't have it configured, I usually don't have pre-builds. Did what? Oh, sorry. I don't even know what that means. You think I should do that? I've never heard of it before.
I think because it's the events, like otherwise you're broadcasting to everyone publicly, but people who's like pre-registered should be seeing this.
Okay, because we have our Zoom folks watching, so I think I don't want to do this. Okay, yeah, but thank you. Yeah, so we do have participants watching now, so hopefully the people in the lobby, hopefully there's no one in the lobby that is part of this. Okay, so yeah, this Codespace started. All right, so now we're in the Codespace. So, once again, the way that the Codespace can be customized is the dev container.json. And this one is pretty simple. So the image is a Docker image. Who here has used Docker? Anyone use Docker? Okay, so if you are familiar with Docker, you can make your own Docker and you can reference a Docker file. You can even reference Docker Compose if you want to get really fancy. That's what I do in my Codespaces that have databases or caches and that sort of thing. But you can also just, if you're not familiar with that, if you just use this is the universal image. So this is the default image that Codespace uses for every repo. So it has a ton of stuff in it. It's got, Python, JavaScript, probably has R. It just has, everything they could, stick in there, they put in there to try and get it to work with the most number of repos. Because most repos in the world don't have a dev container.json, right? And so if they don't, that's what they use. And then we can do additional things. So you can have a recommended, CPU requirement. This is, I run this command in order to automatically install all the Python packages, right? So from the requirements.txt. And this is the kind of thing that typically, students would actually have to do if they were developing locally. But I, go ahead and just do that so that when you get into the space, it's already set up. But if you thought it was important for students to learn about how to install requirements because you want them to be capable of doing that locally, then, you could have them run it themselves, right? Because I could go down here and, that's a good point. So since this is in the browser, we do have to give permission to use the clipboard. So the very first time you use a code space and you try to copy paste, you have to give permission for the browser tab, at least in Edge. I'm in the Edge browser right now, just like Chrome. All right. Let's see. So other things in here are customizations. And you can have customizations for Codespaces. You can have customizations for Viz Code. In the future, the hope is that these dev containers are something that is supported across other environments, not just Microsoft ones. So in the future, like hopefully, there'd be like a JetBrains customization if you're using that. Oh, I just use Edge because I figure I work for Microsoft now, so I should. But Edge and Chrome both share the same underlying architecture, so no, it should work fine in Chrome. Yeah, I'm just trying to be somewhat loyal with my Mac here. So I typically do a lot of Viz Code customizations here. The only customization is the extensions, and we could add more to this. So let's say we wanted to add the live share extension, right? So when you search for an extension is in Viz Code, so here's a lifestyle extension. So if we clicked install right now, that would install just for me, just for this code space. But if I wanted to make it part of this, this environment all the time, you can actually right click and say add to dev container.json. So I'm just going to do that and then take a look at my dev container. And now it's in the dev container. So then I could commit this and make that change to there. So then anybody going forward who use this would have that extension. All right, so let's open a notebook. So here we have the notebook. This is using Pandas and Matplotlib. So the first time you run a cell, you need to pick a Python environment. This is the same way it works in VS Code locally. Here, this environment has Python 3.10. I generally recommend using the highest version of Python possible because the debugging messages have actually gotten much better in more recent versions of Python, and they're continually improving. So I actually posted in the Python thread, I was like, listen, I have an idea for a better error message, and then they went and they added it. So if you have students who struggle to understand the Python messages, try to upgrade your Python. So 3.10 has some better messages. 3.11 is even better. Like 3.11 is taking it next level. So I really recommend 3.10 or 3.11 to improve the error message experience for your students. Okay, so then so that ran, so that's cool. Down here is the Jupyter tab. And this is where you can see the variables. So this is very much designed to work well with Pandas. So if you're doing data 8 has its table library, data science library. I don't know how well it would work with the data 8 package, but if you are, so are any of you using Pandas in your classes? Okay, yeah, so then this is actually helpful because you click on it, you can click on this little thing here, and then it'll open up a data viewer. So it's just, a convenient way of being able to inspect your data frames at any time without having to, write the code to do that. one thing I thought I'd show, because it was, I tried to not talk about AI because I don't know who wants to hear it, but everybody mentioned it. So I thought I should show Copilot in a notebook so you can decide whether you're going to allow it in your class or not. So yeah, and I usually don't put it in dev containers because I want to have other people make the decision for themselves. But here you can see Copilot's running. The way you know it's running is because down here I've got the little, I think of it as a frog. Apparently it's a robot, but to me, I always just look for the froggy. I'm like, is the froggy there? And you can also, you can disable it or disable for the particular language that you're working on. A lot of times I disable it for Markdown because just gets too uppity. Like if I'm like writing my materials in Markdown, it feels weird to have somebody put the words in my mouth for things I'm, teaching. But I love it when it puts code in my mouth. So I usually do keep it on for Python. So it'll work inside the notebook. So this is something really cool. So let's try it inside the notebook. You can already see it has a suggestion, but what I'm going to do is tell it I want to make a bar chart. The thing is that I do not really know Matplotlib, and because I'm not a data scientist, I don't really want to become an expert in Matplotlib. So I just use Copilot to tell me how to do stuff like, make a bar chart. So, I just do this and then I run it and boom, I have a bar chart. I think that's great because I don't want to learn Matplotlib. I just, at this point in my life, there's just too many libraries and I can't learn them all. So for me, Copilot's really great when it comes to using packages, using libraries, using frameworks, because there's just too much in the world and I can't keep it in my head anymore. It does, yeah. So I actually, if you are curious, I did just write a blog post and make a video about best practices for prompting GitHub Copilot. So you can watch the video, but the idea is that you want to provide context. So that could be the files you open, the comments you write, the imports, the variable names. So write good variable names. So these are like all good practices anyway. With the comments, I do say here that I actually often do delete comments afterwards because they, sometimes I have too many comments. But most of these are really good practices anyway. They'll generally make your code clearer. So the clearer you make your code, better for Copilot, better for future you, better for future, colleagues and classmates. Yeah, so these are my recommendations. So if you are, going to be teaching the use of Copilot, LLMs, that sort of thing, it's good to know, how to use them well. So my suggestions are, write nice, clear code, provide context, be predictable, and use linters, because Copilot does not always get it right. But if you have a linter installed, then the linter will let you know. So like right now, I don't actually really have a linter installed in here. So if I was going to, I'd probably bring in either, let's see, I usually like to bring in Rough, because it was written by my friend and it's also the most popular linter right now for Python. It's very fast. And there's also Pylance is another one that's good, that's from Microsoft. Oh, and it's already installed because it comes from it's part of the Python pack, so I do have that one already. So yeah, okay, so let's see. So we've seen some extensions. Another extension that I do want to mention, because this may be relevant, especially if you're using Jupyter, is called Data Wrangler. It's in preview right now. This is from Microsoft, but the idea is that Pandas is hard. I don't like Pandas. I think it has a really unintuitive interface, like the way in which you write Pandas functions and methods and whatnot. So what Data Wrangler does is that you tell it like what you want to do to your data, like clean your data. So it's very good for data cleaning and basic data stats. So you tell it what you want to do and it writes the Pandas code for you. Just doing it based off of manipulation. So let's see, so we have Data Wrangler. So I think what we can do, I actually haven't really, I've only seen demos of how to use Data Wrangler. I haven't used it myself, not being a data scientist. So I can't give a demo of it right now because I don't even remember how to get it. Let me see if they have a screenshot here. Setting up your environment, blah, 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 blah. And launching data wrangler from a notebook. Okay, you'll see it. Oh, read CSV. All right, yeah. So where did we read the CSV? Right here. Let me try that again. And let me see. So after we clicking the tab. All right, let me see if I can get it here. Did I install it? Yeah. Yeah, let's see. All right. And is there an option here to run in Data Wrangler? No, I don't see it. So I'll have to learn how to use it, but I saw demos of it and it looked really cool because you would just basically do stuff using a user interface and then it would generate pandas code for you and then you could bring that into your notebook. So that's another thing if you're, if you're working with, folks that are, haven't done as much programming or doing data science on the side, that can be a really nice tool for them. So they don't have to be a pandas expert, but they can still, come up with the code they need. So Data Wrangler and Copilot together, they're pretty complementary. All right, okay. Let's see, any questions on the stuff I've been showing so far? Okay, all right, so, okay, so other stuff I want to show is just because there were some questions about like customizing Codespaces and how, how it works with your account. So when you go to GitHub account, there is a Codespaces tab here. And this has a bunch of settings that are relevant. So these are the ones I was talking about with the idle timeout and then the retention period. So I have mine super low. So 30 minutes is my idle timeout. So that means if I walk away, I go eat lunch. If my lunch was more than 30 minutes, then I have to, refresh my tab. Maximum value is 4 hours if you have really long lunches. Then there's the retention period. The default is 30 days, but you can make it really low. And what happens is you get an email. So it's going to show what that email looks like. So, so Codespaces, you have Codespaces that are about to be deleted. I get this email like every morning because I use so many Codespaces that there's always something about to be deleted. So it'll just have a list of them and you can, decide whether you're going to continue using it or if you're okay with it being deleted, then you just ignore the email. Okay, what else do we have here? There's various defaults here. So as I was saying, like, I've been using Codespaces in the browser because I love browsers. You can connect to these Codespaces from local bizcode. Or you can also, if you just like the idea of being able to have a more consistent environment, you can make a dev container and use, so here is my local viz code. And you can tell way down here, sorry, you can barely see it, but it does say dev container. So that's how I know when I'm in a dev container is the bottom left right here says dev container. The other way I know is I can go and I can see here dev containers. I have this option to reopen it locally. So whenever I'm in viz code, if I'm in a project that has a dev container folder here with the dev container.json, it will give me an option when I open that project and it'll say, do you want to open in a dev container or not? So a lot of times locally, I do develop in a dev container just because it's a more reliable environment than my Mac. My Mac has all sorts of Python versions and I can't keep track. So here, this is using a Python 3.10. This has got Node installed. This has PowerShell installed. PowerShell is a Windows thing. And as it turns out, I now have to debug stuff in PowerShell because I develop for Windows users too. So it's got various things. It's got the extensions. It also has a Docker file here, which installs a few other things that need to be installed on the image. So yeah, so this is developing completely locally. All right, and this only works because I do have Docker running. So I've got Docker running. So Docker, this is actually using Docker Desktop. So it is creating a Docker container, and I can see that from Docker Desktop.
Sorry, this is really stupid. So if I miss that 30-day email, like I set up something What am I losing?
So what you're losing is the actual Docker container that it's created with any local changes.
But all the setup.
Yeah, so all of that is going to mean it's just if you have uncommitted changes, right? So if we look at my Codespaces, right? So here uncommitted changes, right? So that's what you'll lose. They're not going to keep the uncommitted changes around. So you know, you can just go in there and push them to a branch or you know, download them or whatever. That's what you lose. You don't lose your setup. You can easily recreate the containers. And most times, vast majority of the time, I just let it go. The only, you know, the time I don't is when I see it as uncommitted changes. And then I'm like, oh, okay, I wonder if those changes were important. Clearly, they're not that important if I just left them there and didn't even commit them to a branch. So I try to, you know, always be committing and pushing to a branch. But yeah, that is what you can lose is uncommitted changes. Yeah, question.
So, how do you tell how much you use?
Yeah, good question. Let's go look at that. I'm kind of scared because okay, we've got 7 days left in I don't know how many days are in this month, but let's go ahead and see. Let's see, how do we find billing? There we go. Plans and usage. The only reason I pay money is because I sponsor people on GitHub. So you can see all of this money here is because of sponsors that I sponsor, people I sponsor. Let's see, I have GitHub Pro, and then down here in usage this month, we can see actions, packages, and down here is Codespaces. Yeah. So yeah, I've actually done pretty well, even though I've been actually using Codespaces quite a bit this month because I've been debugging the Data 8 dev container. I've been trying to like come up with the optimal dev container. So I've done like so many different combinations of things just to see. But yeah, so I've used 140 of 180. So I guess I have 180. I don't remember why. Maybe that's from GitHub Pro. Yeah, when it distributes it across the cores, because the higher the core, the more compute you're using, and they have different price per hour. Oh, so that's how I do it. Okay, I've never looked at this before. This breakdown here. There's also storage. So storage is both like what your, the local files, because you can upload, you could drag and drop things into your repository. But then what you can spend a lot on is the pre-builds. And this is what I was talking about, is that if you wanted someone to be really quickly be able to go into your code space, like if you wanted like 30-second startup time for Codespaces in your classes, what you can do is do a pre-build. But pre-builds, they do cost money because you are literally storing the image on the GitHub servers. So that's up to you. It could be worth it. What I do in my workshops is like what I'll do. Let me open up a workshop. Right. So at like the beginning, I talk about the 3 options for working is, GitHub Codespaces. You can do local development with VS Code in the dev container section and Docker Desktop, or you do local development with whatever whatever you've got run locally. So I always give students these 3 options, but pretty much everybody goes with Codespaces in these workshops. These workshops are for adult women, and they pretty much all use Codespaces because it just feels like the easiest thing to do. And it's nicer for me as the instructor because there's less stuff for me to debug. And these are all over Zoom, so it's hard for me to debug their local environment too. So then what I do is like, let's say I'm getting to, a demo. Let's see, so this one, right? So simple class website. So when I first get started talking about an example, this is when I ask them to start up the code space, because it can take a few minutes to start it up. And, these are workshops that have limited time, like it's a 2-hour workshop. So I asked them at this point, like, if you are going to make a code space, click through to it now. And this is also like, it's fine because this is also the point where I'm going to make the code space. So I'll show them how to do it then too. So that's something to keep in mind, is just if you're trying to use code spaces and you have limited time, then starting up the code space can take up time. So options are to, have them do it few minutes before they start using it themselves, or to use a pre-build and then it'll load a lot faster. Okay, let's see. What else do I want to show? Any questions from folks over Zoom? let's see. So we shot in, All right. So I could show, yeah, actually show some more advanced dev containers. So it's saying you can do databases. Let's start with a more basic database one here. So this Postgres playground here. And this one, so if we look at the dev container, it starts to get a lot more fancier. So this dev container references a Docker Compose file, and it has some port stuff here. So this is saying that the Postgres database is going to be on port 5432, which is a standard Postgres port. For extensions, I add on some SQL extensions. SQL Tools is really great. So if you're teaching SQL, SQL Tools is really great. There's a Postgres driver for it. Then I've got a bunch of settings. So this is like whether I want linting to be enabled. So I usually I do enable linting. So this is a repo that's got like heavy linting happening, where it's actually even auto fixing errors on save. So that's the sort of thing you can do if you want to have that sort of environment. I have auto formatting as well. Black is the most popular Python formatter. So I have auto formatting. So that way I'm always writing pretty code. It's up to you whether you think students should like learn themselves how to write pretty code or just have it fixed for them all the time. But in industry, we always run black on our code before we commit it. So we use something called a pre-commit hook in order to always run black on the code, because you don't want to be committing poorly formatted code. Then I configure the SQL Tools connections. So this is for the extension. So you can also customize extensions inside the dev container. So this way, when I start this up, SQL Tools will know how to connect to the local database, and even knows how to connect to a deployed Azure database. So one on the Microsoft servers. Yeah, and then I install the requirements. So that's the dev container. I should actually start this up and show you. So code, all right. So we'll see what that looks like, but I'll keep poking around at it. So Docker Compose, so Docker is a way of making these, repeatable environments. And it's what industry has moved to using as a way of hosting websites. A lot of times we'll define the environment for that website using Docker files, and then we deploy it that way. And it's nice for cloud portability, because I can take my Docker container and deploy it on Azure, deploy it on Amazon, deploy it on cloud. If I need to deploy it, if I want to scale it up for way more usage, then I deploy that same container on 30 different computers, and now I've got a more scalable website. So there's this general move in industry towards doing containerization using Docker, but we can also use it to make our development environments. And it's nice if the development environment is like the deployed environment. So anyway, this is Docker Compose. So it creates both the Python container for running the code, and then it also creates a Postgres database. If we were in production, these would often be on different computers. So this is a way of composing multiple services together, and the Docker file itself is pretty small. But I don't want to worry people too much with Docker stuff. If you're not a Docker expert, you can still go really far with dev containers. What I always do is I just find the dev container that's the most like what I want, and I copy that. And then, if it works, great. If I need to tweak some things, then I tweak some things. So I don't want to scare folks off with the Docker stuff, but I also want you to know how far you can take it if you want to take it farther, right? This is a wide wall, high ceiling. So let's see. So here's SQL Tools. Let me see if I can connect to this local database. So let's see. Will you connect? Yeah. So now you can see it's connecting, and we can see there are no tables yet. So I can run some code to make some tables. So I could run raw SQL like this, or what I usually do is I use an ORM and object relational manager, and let's see if this will work. Oh yeah, and I need to make an environment file. So I'll use these for the environment variables. I'll just copy this. I always, when it comes to credentials, I put them in a .m file, and I always make sure the .m file is ignored. Otherwise, everybody will check in their secrets. So if you're gonna have, potentially a place where secrets might be put, then make sure it can't be checked in. So that's always get ignored. Okay, so let's see. So we can run this code now, and this time it should work. All right, so we can see the SQL that this executed. And then if we go back to here, and we can see that there is a restaurants table, and we can take a look and see that it has no data, because I need to add some data here. But this is really cool, and you can run with SQL tools. You can do, you could run. So if you're just teaching SQL, not even teaching Python, you can run, run commands here. So select star from restaurants, right? And we can run it. And we got no data because there's still nothing in there. I should do an insert command. But if you are teaching SQL, that is an option.